show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go. Bass in your face. Bass in your face.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Uncommon Sense with Jose Negron. Now, for the benefit of those of you who are not familiar with the channel or watching this channel for the first time, the reason why it's called Uncommon Sense because here on this platform, we discuss everyday issues where we try to find logical solutions, but not everyone uses logic. So for that reason, it is called Uncommon Sense. I also have another YouTube channel called Latina Diaspora, where I discuss issues pertaining to Latinos in the. I am live on Facebook and YouTube, and also the subscriber mode has been enabled. Meaning, if you're not a subscriber and if you wish to enter a comment in the chat, you will need to subscribe to the channel. As always, I want to give a huge shout out to all those who've already subscribed to the channel. Whether you've been a supporter from the very beginning or just recently joined as late as today, I really appreciate your love and continued support. I also want to give a huge shout out to all those who follow me on social media, as well as those who allow me to enter in your devices and those who watch from the clouds, even the haters. So, what I'm going to ask you to do, if you have not done so already, I'm going to ask you to please subscribe, and set the bell notifications to all. So, therefore, whenever I do produce content, you will have the opportunity to catch it live or catch it on the playback. So, as you can see by the thumbnail, the topic for tonight is how to deal with depression. So, what we're going to do is we're going to describe what it is. We're going to talk some causes, and we're going to talk some solutions dealing with depression. And the reason why I'm talking and mentioning this topic is that one thing we have to bear in mind that going into the holiday season, which begins on February and it goes through the New Year's, well, it's for many people this is a happy time. This is a glorious time. For some, it's not. The people that are in a heightened state of depression. So what I do is every year around this time, I discuss it because it's something that needs to be discussed. But we don't just discuss problems, we try to come up with solutions. So I will be talking about it, during this holiday season, where I'm going to be talking about mental health issues. But before we get into the main topic, we're going to have another episode of In My Words. So right now we're in this 6th week of the government shutdown. Okay. And of course, one of the main issues, there are multiple issues. First of all, federal employees not getting paid and having to work basically for free. People who not able to receive SNAP benefits. Flights have to be delayed and canceled due to lack of personnel. Now, They reached some sort of a tentative agreement of which they will restore staff benefits. But the problem is this budget agreement is only good until January the 30th. Meaning, guess what, folks? Going into the new year, we can go through all this crap again. Now, what's disappointing is that for all this time that the Democrat politicians been holding off because they want to make sure that the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act stay in place. So, and of course, it was the Affordable Care Act that was meant to provide medical coverage for all American citizens. So basically, that demand has been removed to be discussed later on. Um, I have a huge problem with this agreement for multiple reasons. First of all, the whole thing is that there was once a time when you had a budget that goes through the fiscal year, which goes from October the 1st to September 30th. So now what we're doing is basically we're just continuing to kick the can, which means assuming everything gets taken care of. Guess what? We're gonna have to go through the same situation again in January. I say enough is enough. Come up with a budget for the entire fiscal year. So therefore, people don't have to be worrying uh, about federal employees not getting their compensation and people not being denied SNAP benefit and other issues. But that's the state of our government today. Now, another thing that I've seen, and it's kind of bordering on disgusting, is that there's been a lot of memes um, in TikTok regarding the new mayor, Soham Mandani, and that all of a sudden New York City will be under Sharia law, um, and the police will be riding on camels, and the subway system will be operated by camels, and that New York will be basically um, an Islamic paradise, and that that the trans announcements will be sitting talking about saying prayers, and no, you Islamic prayers. Now, this is the problem I have. First of all, Mandani has not even occupied the office yet. Number one. Number two, the fact of the matter is, it's very xenophobic regarding the fact that he is a Muslim. Okay, yes, he is a Muslim, and yes, he is. You may have said controversial things in the past. Okay, who has not? And also some of the things that he wants to talk about. Once he do is by basically free bus transportation, that rents being frozen, and that all to be paid by taxes by millionaires. It's all well and good, but let's first of all, there's no such thing as a free lunch. I mean, with every benefit that they talk about, it's gonna have to be paid somehow. Okay. First of all, let's talk about the whole thing about the free buses. That's not gonna happen. Okay. particularly if the Metropolitan Transit Authority had its way. What they might do, what they could do, is make sure that half fare is eligible for low income individuals. So at least that way it won't be so expensive for them to buy the subway. As far as freezing the rents, um, that I'm gonna have to wait and see. But one of the things that's a big issue here in New York that affordable housing, for all intents and purposes, does not exist. Part of the reason why it's called a median income. So it's based on the wages, the salary, but the problem is it's not just based on the wages, the salary here in New York, but it's also the surrounding counties like Westchester and Rockland County. So what's considered affordable in, say, in Scottsdale, which is a more affluent community compared to New York, is not the same thing. And the reality is this: considering how expensive rent is, they need to have come up some sort of solution, whether it be tax. I mean, I don't know what it is, but something needs to be done. But another thing that's horrible is that we have municipal employees residing in shelters. Now, think about it. You're talking about municipal employees. Many of them have bachelor's degrees. Some of them have master's degrees. Some of them make about $45,000-$50,000 a year. Well, that may be great income if you're living in the South or some places like like in the in Colorado or Montana or in the Dakotas. $50,000 in New York is, I mean, that's technically considered poor. So we have to wait and see what happens. But one thing that we all need to do, and this is not applicable just to the mayor, this is applicable to every politician, is that, okay, we're going to give these politicians an opportunity to see what they can get done. Okay. However, we need to hold these politicians accountable when they don't succeed in what they promise. And if they aren't able to provide, with legit reasons why they succeed, then we need to vote these people out of office and vote for other people. Okay. But the whole notion that you can get, there's a free lunch is available, it does not exist. If you want to provide additional benefits, guess what? You're going to have to find a way to pay it off. Okay. Particularly in line of the fact that here in New York City, we're mandated that we have to have a budget, and we cannot operate with deficits. Okay. So if we do have a deficit, we have to find a way to resolve it, whether it be by increasing taxes, whether it be by reducing expenditures, which means reducing benefits, which means some people are going to get upset because of their benefits and the service is going to be reduced. So somehow Mandani will have the opportunity to see what it is to run a city like New York. And yes, I do get it. It's not the easiest job in the world, but yet he ran to be a mayor of the future. So let's see what happens. And with that being said, Now, before I continue, let me just state for the record that the link to join the panel has been pinned. Should anyone wishes to opine regarding the topic at hand, they may do so. Let me make this perfectly clear, as I always do every time I go live. If I never see you before, if I never heard from you before, I will insist that you count up in the backstage before I let you on the panel. And the reason for that is to make sure that no one tries to flash any pornographic images, which will lead to the people of YouTube to take down the stream. Once I see that you are going to abide by my guidelines, okay, then I will let you on the panel. Whether you decide to cam up or not cam up after that I leave to your discretion. Now, as I stated, depression is something that we all deal with from time to time, and there are many reasons for it. But first of all, let us define what is depression. Okay. Okay, just give me a moment. Excuse me. Ugh. Just give me a moment. Depression is a common mental health condition characterized by persistent feelings of sadness, loss of interest, and low energy that significantly interferes with daily life. Okay. So that is the actual definition of depression. And of course, there are many factors which will lead to someone going into a state of depression. It could be the loss of a loved one. It could be the loss of a romantic relationship. It could be through uh, dealing with illness. It could be dealing with dealing with multiple issues. So there are many reasons why a person fall into a state of depression. Now, let me just explain to you what are the symptoms, which are persistent sadness or depressed mood, loss of interest or pleasure in activities once enjoyed, changes in appetite or weight. That could be either losing your desire to eat or overeating. Sleep disturbances, insomnia, or excessive sleeping. That could be the situation when you're not getting enough sleep or you're getting too much sleep. Fatigue or loss of energy. Difficulty concentrating or making decisions. Feelings of worthlessness or guilt. And thoughts of self-harm or self-deletion. Now, one thing we all have to bear in mind, okay, and this is especially true around the holidays. While for many people, the time between Thanksgiving and New Year's, it's a happy time for many, it's not a happy time for all. Okay. And there are different causes when it comes to depression. There could be biological factors such as genetics, brain chemistry imbalances, and hormonal changes. It could be psychological factors, stressful life events like trauma, negative coping mechanisms. Okay. One thing we have to bear in mind, not everyone copes with difficulty in the same way. Some people are more equipped to deal with trauma. Some people are more equipped to deal with tragedy. Some people are more equipped with disappointments. And there's also social factors, social isolation, lack of support, and cultural factors. Many times, people that are in a state of depression, they feel like they are alone, that there is no one there that are willing to listen to them. Now, depression is typically diagnosed by qualified healthcare professionals such as a psychiatrist or psychologist based on a thorough evaluation including medical history and physical exam, mental health assessment, and questionnaires or rating scales. Okay. Now there are different ways to deal with depression. One is psychotherapy, which is talk therapy, such as cognitive behavior therapy or CBT, can help individuals identify and change negative thought patterns and behavior. Um, Medication. Antidepressant medication can help regulate brain chemistry and improve mood. Another treatment is lifestyle changes, such as exercise, good sleep, hygiene, and a healthy diet can improve overall well-being and reduce symptoms. Now, with proper treatment, most people with depression can improve their symptoms and live fulfilling lives. However, depression is a chronic condition that may recur over time. It's important to follow treatment recommendations and seek ongoing support to manage the conditions effectively. One thing we do have to bear in mind is the following. Depression can affect all ages, genders, and backgrounds. Yes, you could be young, you could be old, you could be male, you could be female, okay? Now, there's certain, in my opinion, there are certain groups that can suffer more sharply regarding depression, which is the elderly, okay? Because you have people, they are advanced at age. Many of the people that they know and they love have either moved on or passed away. Plus, as they get older, their health begin to decline. So they're not able to do a lot of the things they were able to do, and many of them are alone. Now, there are different types of depression, such as major depressive disorder and seasonal affective disorder. If you or someone you know experiences symptoms of depression, it's crucial to seek professional help promptly. Early intervention can significantly improve outcome. Okay. Now, the problem is acknowledging that you have a problem. One thing we all have to bear in mind is that there may be people that may have a problem admitting that they have a mental health problem. There may be people that have difficulty admitting that they have a depression. particularly if they are busy trying to care for other people, especially if they are a caregiver for a spouse or a parent or a child or even a sibling. And also, we have to keep this 100. There were people in different generational groups that were not originally encouraged to admit that they have mental health issues, much less that they're in a state of depression. And those same people were not always encouraged to seek therapy. Okay. Particularly if you are a male, because you're taught to be tough, you're taught to tough it out, you're taught not to cry, you're taught not to show your emotions. Well, guess what, people? We all have emotions, male or female. Okay. How you do with it, it's how you do with the emotions. That's how that's what that's what's the issue. And to be perfectly honest, many people in my generation were not encouraged to seek a therapist for fear of being considered insane, for fear of being considered crazy, and for fear to be considered weak. So So for some people in some generations, it could be very hard and it could be a humbling experience to admit that you have a state of depression. But one thing we do all have to understand that admitting that you have a problem, that's half the battle there. Because once you're able to arrive to the conclusion that you have a problem, then you're able, you'll lead to the point where you will seek a solution, whether it be through a therapist, whether it be with speaking with someone from the clergy, whether it be speaking to a close friend or a loved one that will encourage you um, to face with your issues and to find a solution to deal with those mental health issues. Now, one thing we have to understand is that not everyone reacts to depression different. And sometimes when we see people acting, you know, out of character, maybe people being withdrawn or maybe people being angry or what have you, it could be that they might be trying to mask that they have that they're dealing with depression. And sometimes the best for them, the only way they can deal with it is to withdraw, is to act or to act out of character. Now, for those of you who are just tuning in, the topic for tonight is how to deal with depression. Okay, so just give me a moment. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to speak on about the consequences of not dealing with depression. First of all, there is the consequences are emotional and psychological. And those consist of persistent feelings of sadness, hopelessness, and guilt. You feel guilty because you are depressed. Reduced motivation and energy levels. In other words, you don't feel the drive to do the things that you normally do. Difficulty concentrating and making decisions. It's when you are dealing with depression, you cannot think clearly. Increased risk of anxiety, panic disorder, and other health conditions. So that can lead to other mental health issues as well. And thoughts of self deletion. Okay. Now, unfortunately, it is a sad fact that there are thousands of people that every year do choose to self delete themselves because they don't, first of all, they don't see a solution to their problem. They see themselves as a burden, and that if they delete themselves, they will no longer be a burden and they will no longer be being missed. The problem is that is an extreme negative solution to a temporary problem. Now, there's also physical consequences to depression, which is increased risk of diseases such as heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and obesity. Okay, because your immune system becomes weak. And so what some people do to overcompensate is they eat too much, which lead to obesity. Sleep disturbances, insomnia, or excessive sleeping. In other words, people are either they're not getting enough sleep or they're getting too much sleep. Also, physical pain and aches, because when the mind is not well, the body's not well. And of course, weakened immune system. Now, there are other effects when it comes to depression, such as social and interpersonal difficulty in maintaining relationships and social connection, problem at work or school, social isolation and withdrawal, and increased risk of substance abuse. So what happens is when you're dealing with depression, some people will either consume alcohol or partake of narcotics to try to ease their pain. Economic, reduce productivity and job loss, increase healthcare costs, and financial strain due to treatment and other expenses. When your immune system is weakened, you expose yourself to multiple health issues. Other consequences, which are increased risk of self-harm, increased risk of legal problems, impact on family and caregivers, and increased stress on the body, hormonal, and immune system. When you actually think about self-deletion, you're not thinking that of the harm and pain that could be caused on your family should you take that route. Because now what happened is they're dealing with the guilt and they're dealing with all the second guessing. Is like, why didn't they see it? Why they didn't respond? And it would affect your family for a long time. Now, it's important to note that the consequences of depression can vary depending on the severity and duration of the condition, as well as individual factors such as age, gender, and overall health. If you're someone is experiencing symptoms of depression, it's crucial to seek professional health from a healthcare provider or mental health specialist. Early diagnosis and treatment can significantly improve outcomes and reduce potential consequences of depression. So the key is to get treatment, either through a therapist, a psychiatrist, or a psychologist. Okay. Now, one thing it's very important that once you get to that point, when you speak, when you're able to approach a healthcare professional, is to be completely honest regarding the symptoms and what you are experiencing. Okay. It is the same principle when you go see a doctor regarding an ailment, whether it be a cold, whether it be the flu, whether it be a physical condition. In order for the doctor to treat you properly, you have to provide the doctor all the symptoms and all the things that you are experiencing. In order for a mental health professional to deal with depression, you need to be explicit and explain what are the factors and things of that nature. Okay. Yes, it is treatable, but the key is to acknowledge that. Now, what I'm going to do, okay. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some Bible verses to help you to deal with depression. Okay, because of course I'm a born again Christian, and look, I understand that not everyone that watches me is a Christian. So as always, let me make this perfectly clear. I am not trying to compel anyone to embrace Christianity or embrace my version of Christianity. Of course, with everything, I'm gonna talk about give a description. I'm gonna state the facts, but I'm also going to support it with Bible verses because I am a Christian. So. Now, one thing you have to bear in mind, you cannot change what you refuse to confront. Now, in Ephesians 22-24, it talks about put off the old self and be renewed in the spirit of your minds. You have to be able to confront the why you're feeling the way that you're feeling and be completely honest. And of course, sometimes good things fall apart, so better things can fall together. Which brings us to Romans 8, verse 28, which says, and we know all things, God works for the good of those who love him. Okay. God is able to take whatever situation and turn it around to something that's going to be for your well-being. Also God's, okay. Now in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 9 says, he has saved us and called us to holy life, not because of anything we have done, but because we are of his own purpose and grace. Okay, that talks about how we were saved, not for any merit, but for his purposes. And of course, we cannot continue to walk in identity of the past. Okay? We cannot change the past, but we can definitely change our future. Just give me a moment. Now, in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17 says, therefore, if anyone's in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone. The new is here. So that verse tells us not to continue to dwell in the past, but to dwell on who you are, particularly as who you are as a blood-bought, born-again believer. Now, in Philippians chapter 3, verses 13 to 14 says the following. Brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet that I have taken hold of it. But one thing I do, forgetting for what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press toward the goal to win the prize which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. That talks about that no matter how many mistakes you have made or how slow your progress, you're still way ahead than everyone else who isn't trying. So that was acknowledging the fact that you are trying, and of course you're dealing with obstacles. Now, in James chapter 1, verses 2 to 4 says, count it all joy, for the testing of faith produces steadfastness. Now, one thing as a believer, we're going to be tested, okay? We're going to go through trials and tribulations, okay? But one thing we have to understand, in the Gospel, John says, rejoice, for I have overcome the world. In other words, I have overcome all the problems and all the difficulties that everyone will face, including depression. Now, here's another verse of scripture which is very important, which talks about never do anything permanently foolish just because you are temporarily upset. Now, in Proverbs chapter 14, verse 29 says, whoever is slow to anger has great understanding. Now, just think about whoever is slow to anger. It doesn't say we're not going to get angry. It just said whoever is slow. In other words, think rationally before you act. So I'm just going to share with you two more verses. Then I'm going to summarize and I'm going to wrap it up. Now, in Isaiah chapter 43, verses 18 to 19, says the following. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing something new. You cannot undo your past. What you can do is learn from your past so it will have a more positive effect for your present and your future. And with that, I'm going to share one more verse of scripture. And this is talking about the point every single thing that has happened in your life is preparing for the moment that yet to come. In Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11 says, for I know the plans I have for you, plans to give you a future and hope. In other words, everything that God has planned, it is for our well-being. It is for our purpose. So with these verses of scripture that I'm giving you, and of course, one thing in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7 says, place your cares on God, for he will care for you. In other words, Let us place our burdens, our mental health issues in God's hands, for He will take care of us. Okay. Now, the fact of the matter is, as I stated before, depression is something that we're all going to deal with uh, from time to time. And there are many factors to why we all deal with depression. Okay. The key is to acknowledge what you are experiencing. The key is to acknowledge that you are depressed, that you're dealing with difficulty. Okay, that your morale is low. Okay, but one thing we have to bear in mind is that acknowledging that you have a problem, that's half the battle there. Once you acknowledge that you have a problem, that will open you up to solutions. Once you're acknowledging that you're dealing with depression, you are in a state where you're able um, to find solutions, to find ways to deal with depression, whether it be going through a mental health um, professional, whether perhaps seeking spiritual advice from a person of the cloth, or going to the Lord in prayer. Now, when I was dealing with depression, I did both. Yes, yes, I sought therapy. Yes, I went to, I saw a therapist to help me to analyze why I'm feeling what I am feeling. But I also went to the Lord in prayer. Okay. So I want you to pay close attention to what I'm saying. So I'm saying I'm taking the medical knowledge that God has given to mental health professionals and combining it with prayer. Good evening, April Showers. Thank you very much for stopping by. And I just want to let you all know that my friend April Showers Network has her own YouTube channel. So I'm going to ask that you show some love and check out her content. A lot of it, it's very, it's hot, it's thought provoking. A lot of it, it's educational. So I'm going to ask that you show some love and check out her content and subscribe. So just to bring you up to speed, April, I have been talking about how to deal with depression. Okay. Which is something we all got to that we all deal with from time to time. Okay, you know what? I did basically the same thing. The difference is I didn't take any medication. Okay. So what I did was I t- I went to a mental health professional, and I went to prayer. Okay. Okay. Now I know that there are certain people that will state that you should only go to prayer, and I know certain people that say you should only seek a healthcare professional. Okay, my approach was to do both. Okay, um, I don't see it as a contradiction, and for me to see, and for me, to see a healthcare professional does not mean that I lack God's ability um, to administer it to me. Because remember, God does give um, the doctors and the therapists wisdom um, to use in their respective fields. The problem is that not all the healthcare professionals, whether it be the physician or whether it be the therapist, acknowledges that the knowledge that they gain comes from God. Okay, there are doctors and therapists that do acknowledge that. Exactly. Okay, so that's why I'm saying that an effective combination is a mental health professional and prayer. Okay, that's why I said it. Okay, because when again we have to bear in mind, God is the source of all wisdom. God is the source of all knowledge. Okay, it's just unfortunately we have certain people who do not acknowledge that God is the source of all knowledge. Okay, we do, but that's the reality. So I don't know if anyone was okay. Now I see here we have a guest. So let me just state for the record that the views of those who appear on the panel are not necessarily those of the host of the channel. Any attempt to copy material without the consent of the host is prohibited. By appearing on the call, you waive your right to your image. Some of the views that people hold may be considered offensive to some viewers. If you do not like the content, you can block the channel. Now we're going to bring in our guest. Good evening, April.
Hey, Jose. Hey. And I also want to say the views and the opinions I expressed are mine. They are not of Jose's. If I say something and don't nobody like it, just put it in the comments. Don't get mad at Jose. Be mad at me. Okay. Jose, you are so right when
Yes.
you say somebody's going to deal with depression at one time in their life. And I'm going to say this as a woman. Women, we go through so much. We go through hormone changes, chemical imbalances. So we are going to go through some depression. And don't be ashamed. I'm telling you, don't be ashamed. And as Jose says, I trust in God, but I also trust in the doctors. And then there is some science. But so it's nothing wrong. And then me, I have to take antidepressants to really get myself back on track because, I went through breast cancer and, I lost my breast. That changed my hormones. They were all off whack. I mean, I was going through something. And I'm going to tell you, I had that chemical imbalance going on too. So, please, don't be ashamed. Do not ever feel like you are alone. And if you don't think that you can talk to somebody, because, we got people that judge. You got people that's going to say, oh, I would never go to a doctor. Some of us need some extra help. And if you have those type of people and deep down inside that you need some help, they do have hotlines that you can call and talk to other people that would understand what you're going through. See, a lot of people that have not walked in your shoes, they can't relate to it, because some people have walked this earth and not been affected by anything, so they say. you know. But don't let what another person thinks about doctors, the Lord, being on antidepressants, you know, don't let their opinion keep you from getting the help that you need. And that's all I wanted to say, Jose.
And and another thing, this is something that I mentioned earlier, that in our generation, okay, we were not taught, to try to seek therapy, okay,
Oh, that's a
because
sin.
if we, yeah, because if we were to acknowledge that, people will say we were weak, people will say we're crazy, and no, it's just that the fact of the matter is, most people at one time or another is going to go through a situation that's going to cause them to lead to a state of depression, whether it be because of an illness, whether it be because of a death, whether it be because of loss of employment, or whether it be some traumatic situation that happened in our lives.
So true. So true. Yeah. And we did grow up in that era, like, oh my God, what goes on in this house stays in this house. Nobody got healed. You know, we walked around, pretending like nothing didn't happen. Everything was okay, and that was not good for us. That was terrible for us. Yeah.
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 I mean, but that's why we need to continue to discuss these topics, to let people know it's okay to acknowledge that you are depressed, that it is okay um, to seek a healthcare professional. Okay. Now, other people they prefer to speak with their okay, and we just lost April. I'm sorry. And some people would prefer to speak with a person of the cloth, so to speak. I don't know if she's going to come back, but the reality is this: at some point in our lives, we're all going to deal with bouts of depression. Okay, I think it's very rare that a person does not go. And if they're going to, if they're going to be honest, it's going to be very rare that people do not go through bouts of depression. Okay, let's see if we can. Okay,
Oh my
go ahead.
God! I guess the streaming service. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's going on anymore. But continue on, Jose.
No, I was just saying that it's no problem. I mean, no one should feel ashamed to acknowledge that they are in a state of depression. And if people are going to be honest, I would say the majority of the people out there at some point is going to be depressed, because they're going to be depressed over something, whether it be an illness, whether it be loss of employment, whether it be going through personal problems, whether it be romantic. I mean, most of us are going to be going through something that's going to bring us to a state of depression.
And you can secretly be depressed and not even realize it.
Correct.
You can be actually going through the motions, but you don't even realize it because you just think, okay, I'm just going to bed early. I don't want to talk to anybody. Uh, you know, and depression can lead to a lot of addictions. And this is why I tell
Yes.
people, you got to advocate because there's a lady here in my building, and she always says, like, after her mother passed, dealing with the grief and depression, she ended up eating. And this woman is close to 400 pounds now. Now she's trying to lose the weight. So, like I said, a lot of times, you know, depression will lead to other things, and which can be addictions because we're not dealing and facing the fact of what we need to face. One thing I enjoy about coming over here with Jose and I admire about him, we grew up in the same era. And see, this is why I try to tell people I don't discriminate due to race, color, creed, religious, or political backgrounds. Because we grew up in the era where I was in a different household and so was he. But we didn't talk about stuff like this. We prayed about it. You don't go to no doctor. I mean, if you would have mentioned going to the doctor, all hell would have broke loose. Ain't nothing wrong with you. You better go, uh, you know, take it off. Pray about it. And you like, no, there's something wrong. But we grew up in that era, and that wasn't good. We didn't have a voice. Y'all have a voice now. Y'all have hotlines. I mean, we probably had hotlines back then, but we didn't know about them. They didn't have social media. But just don't be ashamed. You can't be ashamed. That's the only thing I can tell people. Uh, we make our own self depressed too because we're ashamed to say, you know, I can't shake this. You know, um, the relationship didn't work out. They fired me from the job. My siblings don't treat me the way I think they should treat me. I'm always arguing with somebody, anything. And so that will cause you to be depressed. Some people it will. Everybody is not strong. So everybody can't judge your walk. So that's why I'll tell people, you know, sometimes, you got to go to that therapist or call that hotline and talk to that person because they're on that non-judgmental basis.
Mhm. We cannot
And
we
I'm going to
cannot
mute my
stress it
mic.
enough. Yeah,
Hmm?
we cannot stress it enough, which is
No.
there is no shame to seek help. Okay, and I'm not saying to seek help in prayer. Well, prayer is very helpful. You can also seek help with therapy. Okay, it's just that I decided to use both, and I was fortunate because I did not have to take any medication. Now, I'm not trying to say anything negative regarding those that took medication. It's just that in my case, it was not necessary.
Mhm.
But the bottom line is if you are dealing with issues of depression, you need to love yourself enough to try to find a solution. Because left untreated,
Yes.
it's going to lead to multiple health issues. It's also going to lead to
Mhm.
addictions, and it can lead to destructive behavior to also self deletion.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, Jose will tell y'all, I try to be as honest as possible because, like we're saying, we grew up in a time where we really didn't have a voice. We just was told we had to do this. We wasn't given a reason why. Just it's my way, no way, or the highway type of thing. But you got to love yourself, and you know just love yourself enough to go get the help. And if that means not sharing that information with anybody, because you've got to fight for you. Ain't nobody gonna fight for you but you. Most of these people, they will know you going through something. Everybody don't love you the way that you think they love you neither. Some people want to see you struggling, knowing something wrong with you, but you know, now you're at your lowest point in life because you might have lost a good job, you know, you might have found out your significant other cheated on you, and this is common things, and these things will lead you to depression. And everybody, some people are going to be happy that you're going through that. That's why you have to fight for your life. You got to fight for your life. You got to fight for your own mental health. You got to fight. And if that means not telling anybody, you know, just please go get the help that you need. Because I had a friend, uh, and she just texted me this week. And she finally decided to come clean with me. And I kept saying, what's wrong? Something's wrong. Something's wrong. And so she's like, and I got the text message. I could take a screenshot and send it. She's like, I'm just, life has really been hard on me. Well, she just lost her mother and stuff. And I was telling her, why didn't you call me? Most people don't know. Like when my father died, I slit my wrist. And she said, I never knew that. I said, well, I don't know how you didn't. But she said, well, I didn't want to tell anybody because everybody keeps saying, this too shall pass. And I was like, no, if I need to get on a plane, go to Houston for you to go get some therapy, then I'll do that. And this was just last week. She said no, but she did make an appointment to go get some counseling. So, stop worrying about what other people are going to think. And you know what, Jose? Why is that? Why do we worry about what other people think?
I wish I knew the reason why. Okay. And particularly one thing we have to bear in mind. We cannot control what other people say or do. We control what's going to be our response. April, are you there? April, are you there? Okay. It looks like she's having some issues with her internet connection. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start to wrap this up. But when the bottom line is this: most of us we're going to deal with depression because of one reason or another. It is to our well-being that we acknowledge that we have that issue. It is it is for our well-being that we deal with it, because left untreated, it could lead to other issues, it could lead to other addictions, and it could lead to destructive behavior. Okay, so if you forget anything else that was said, do not be afraid to acknowledge that you are depressed, and do not be afraid to get the help that you need in order to deal with it. So, with that being said, I do hope that this stream has been to a benefit for you. Um, you're more than welcome to share it, because, and particularly with those who are dealing with depression, to let them know that they're not alone, that there are ways to deal with it, whether it be through a healthcare professional, whether it be through medication, or whether it be through seeking God's guidance in prayer. So the next time I'm going to be live will be on Wednesday at 9:30, where I'm going to be discussing the topic of mercy, a biblical Christian concept. Now, as always, I'm just giving you my perspective. I am not trying to coerce anyone to embrace Christianity or embrace my version of Christianity. I'm just giving you my observation, my point of view. And of course, what we're going to do is we're going to end it the same way that we always do. We must do everything possible to avoid the presence of the mentally and intellectually challenged, because if we fail to do so, we will be infected by their stupidity and mass insanity. And whatever you say do for the glory of God. So please share this with other people who are going through this situation. I will talk about it on other occasions. The next time I will also have, when I talk about this issue, I will have resources where you can go and seek assistance. So, with that being said, enjoy. Oh, and before I forget, a huge shout out to the veterans, all the men and women that put their lives on hold in order to serve our country in military service, particularly if they serve in times of war, because we have no understanding of the trauma they go through. We have no understanding regarding what their families go through with their loved ones serving in the military. And if you can, whenever you see someone that is clearly a veteran, show your appreciation and say thank you very much for your military service. And with that being said, thank you very much. And I do hope that this has been a blessing to you. So take care, stay blessed, and peace.